My name is Devin Breen. I am the Director of Federal Sales at Canonical. I work with our federal partners, mission owners, DIV partners as well, to make sure that we have security and compliance requirements we need for my governance workload. And I'm joined here today for a really talk that we're very excited about on secure open source with Zach Burke and Mark Lewis. So I'll let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Devin. I'm Zachary, Burke. I'm coming to you from the DoD's Platform One program. I'm the Iron Bank government leader, and I'm here today to talk to everybody about the work that we do to secure the supply chain for the Department of Defense and federal government, and how we partner with industry and build relationships with our friends here at Canonical, and how this is helping us secure our production environments. And with me here, I have Mark Lewis, who's going to introduce himself.
Hi folks, thanks for your time today in advance. I'm Mark Lewis, I'm the VP of Application Services at Canonical, and in that guise, it's one of those nebulous titles, means that I get one salary, but 2 or 3 jobs. I look after particularly our ISV community, and that's really, and programs and partnerships around that, and that's really what brought us together in the first place, was recognizing that something that we could do to enable that world and yourselves through partnering. And
partnering is so important to the open source community. For folks who maybe don't know a little bit about Canonical, we are the publisher of the Ubuntu open source Linux operating system, but we go deeper than just the infrastructure. With Ubuntu Pro, we are actually now doing infrastructure, libraries and packages, and apps and containers. And so what that means is we're taking the substrate, we're supporting the workloads on your virtual machines, and a critical initiative for supply chain and government today has been Executive Order 14028. And part of that is kind of understanding what's in your Wheaties. And so as a first-party manufacturer and supplier of source code, security is very important to us, and it's very important to Iron Bank. And so that's why we're here together today to talk to you a little bit about the state of the art and where we're headed as a company with our containers and our secure distributions. So we'll go next. And that's just a little bit about Canonical. They've given me some tools here. Let's see if I can walk and chew bubble gum. So Zach, we'd love to know just a little bit about Iron Bank. If you could tell the folks kind of what is it that you guys do at Iron Bank?
Yeah. So I think the Iron Bank, to give everybody, can I get a show of hands? Do we have any customers in here? Is anyone consuming from us? Oh, excellent. Thank you. So for everybody else that didn't raise your hand, to teach you a little bit about what the Iron Bank is in brief is, what we do is, for our customers, we produce an attestation. So what that attestation is this what we refer to as a software bill of materials, or a body of evidence that lets our customers understand what it is that they're consuming. So I think the question that we try and help get our customers, and what we want people to think about, is, do you know where your software comes from, and do you know what's in it? Because you're running it in your production environments, and the adversary has a lot of opportunities to take advantage of the fact that you don't know where your software comes from, most likely, and you don't know what's in it. And so what my job and what my program's job is to do is to help visualize what's in your software and what it is that you're consuming. And so what we're doing, and kind of the innovation that the Iron Bank is bringing to our customer base, is what we call ABCs and ORAs. ABCs is acceptance baseline criteria, and ORAs is overall risk assessment. And so what acceptance baseline criteria gets you is, this is a binary flag. Are you compliant with Iron Bank policy, or are you not compliant with Iron Bank policy? And it's new, so it's in beta, so a lot of our customers aren't compliant, and it looks scary if you're consuming our service and the government's telling you you're not compliant. But the message that I tell everybody is the Iron Bank's a journey. And so when you come here, the fact that we're doing our job means that when people come to me and call me from the government, I get phone calls all the time, and they say, why are my applications not compliant and I'm consuming them? And what I tell them is the burn means it's working, right? Like you are now aware of something that you weren't aware of before. Like your applications are not following industry best practice that me and my people are developing for you. And so what we want to encourage is not necessarily shaming people that aren't compliant, but encouraging people to understand, why am I not compliant, and what does it take me to get to where I want to go? And so that's what acceptance baseline criteria is doing. Overall risk assessments are a little different. They are our solution that we're trying to provide the government to help make continuous risk-based decisions about what they're running in their environments. So currently, just to give everybody some information about how the government decides if it wants to run software or not, we go to people called authorizing officials, which are very important people in the government that have cyber teams that review our requests to run software in production. And we perform these, really elaborate reviews of our requests, and then we get a sticker, and then we're allowed to run in production, and we don't have to approach the issue again for a couple of years. And so it's good that we do this assessment, but we don't do it continuously, and so that is a problem. And so to help us enable AOs to continuously assess what it is that they have running in their environments, we have been engaging with them and building our overall risk assessment score to allow them to instead say, okay, we're going to put a date at the bottom of your ATO document, your authority to operate. Your authority to operate is going to have an overall risk assessment score in it. So you're allowed to run as long as your score meets certain criteria or whatever metrics that AO is interested in seeing in their environment. And if you violate that, we're providing the ability, for those cyber operators in those production environments to monitor those metrics. And if they fall out of compliance with their ATO, they're able to reach back to us, and then through our partnership network, rectify those issues so they can remain in the good graces of their authorizing official. And so that's a little bit about ABCs and RAs. Devin's up next to talk about a little bit about why we're putting so much investment into understanding what we're using.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Iron Bank, as an aggregator source code for the government, as a repository, you're de-risking the supply chain for the rest of the government by running these processes. And so for us, I've been showing this slide for several years. The numbers just keep going up, and we look at the landscape as a cyber pandemic, right? You've got supply chain attacks, you've got source code poisoning. We don't want everybody in their own little enclave basically going out and doing the same work over and over again. It's toil. So our goal is to minimize the attack surface. Our customers that we talk to, if you're building open source software today, there's at least one vulnerability in there that should probably be addressed quickly. So obviously we're all sort of under a time crunch, and we have to be right all the time, but the threats, they only need to be right once. And so our goal with partnering is to provide visibility into the data, and this kind of leads us to the next part of what is the supply chain, right? And what parts of it can we automate, and what parts do we have to do manually?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Devin. So this is something that I'm personally very passionate about, and so I think this simple slide illustrates what the supply chain is really, really succinctly, and how you should think about how software makes it to you. So I think you should think about the delivery of software to your runtime environments very much like how you consume food. So your food is grown on a farm, and then people touch your food, and they do stuff to your food, and then you eat it. That's kind of weird, right? But do you know what they did to your food? Do you know who touched your food? Would you like to know? I kind of would. The same thing's happening to your software. It's being touched, and things are being done to it before you're actually consuming it. And do you want people to be able to do that? I don't, because I have operational rigors that I have to meet for my customers. And my customers run the most secure workloads in the world. And so I cannot allow anybody to touch my software before I'm consuming it. And so because of our operational rigor and what it is that we have to do to achieve mission success, which is like what Devin was talking about, I can't be wrong. I cannot afford to be wrong. The adversary only has to be right once. If I'm wrong once, the cost of that could be immeasurable. And so what it is that the Iron Bank is working on for the community, and we'll talk about a little after this, is how do we secure the supply chain and the software before you actually start consuming it, right? Because I think a lot of our teams spend a lot of time production. Our teams are spending a lot of time protecting the production environment, but we don't really think of what happens to things before it gets there. And so there's a lot of different vectors that can be manipulated to affect stuff before you even start worrying about it. And so that's what my job is, and what Devin and Mark and Canonical are trying to help us do is We're doing something called zero distance delivery that we're going to talk about, which is effectively cutting out the middleman in our farm to table approach here, so that the software that we are consuming, we are validating, through a verification program that this is coming from a build time environment that we recognize and respect, and then it's coming directly into the government, and directly from the Iron Bank, it's going into a runtime environment. And how do you make an auditable process so that I can validate where what we're using has been and where it went? I'll turn it over to Devin here to talk about zero distance.
So we have a big announcement, and I feel bad taking it away. So Mark, I'm actually going to give it back to you.
This is unexpected. This is a phrase we coined 18 months ago when we were talking about this. Zero distance was the idea of actually closing that loop in the middle. Get it to distance zero. How can we supply direct? How can we actually deliver all of those benefits we mentioned? And that's effectively what we're announcing today. It's the Canonical's container portfolio. It's going to be available through Iron Bank. Some of it is there already. We've got work to do, of course, to get the rest of it there. But this is going to be something that can be consumed by everyone in this room. And we think it's a massive step forward in terms of securing the open source supply chain.
So just to maybe expand upon the idea of zero distance, what's important? Why is it important for us to reduce the distance between the publishers and the consumers? And maybe Zachary, I'll throw that to you.
Yeah, I think probably a good analogy for this is third-party marketplaces, like at Amazon, right? We're at an Amazon convention. So if you buy a product unknowingly from a third party on Amazon and there's something wrong with it, and you try and call the company and turn it in for warranty, what are they going to tell you? You didn't buy it from an approved place, so hit the road. And the same thing happens with software, right? There's third-party marketplaces that maybe we don't understand that where we're consuming the software from, the person that's giving it to you might not be who you expect it to be. And we've seen instances of this happening, I think Canonical can talk about this a little more than I can, but it all has to do with when you're using search, right, which is how we consume stuff on the internet. Search can be manipulated, right? And things can appear to be something that they're not. And that's why zero distance delivery and verification is important to me, because it's very difficult to train your workforce to know how to search and to know where to get things that are genuine, right? And so that's a part of the surety of the Iron Bank and what I advertise to my customer base is what you're consuming from me is actually what you want to consume. And I'm minimizing the opportunities for somebody to make it something that you don't want. Take it away.
That's absolutely right. I mean, we had an experience with a very large, I'm the ISV guy, so I'm going to talk about one of the three, suitably anonymous, three biggest ISVs told us, we're using your containers, which was great to hear. And then they told us where they were getting them from. It's like, oh, that's not ours. Where are they now? And it's, oh, well, we've been distributing these for about 2.5 years. It's like, right, with your premium products on top. It's like, yeah, this is a problem. We need to cycle this out as fast as possible. And that's really what led to the zero distance approach and the program that we built. And we started it because we recognized that there is this gap that exists today around securing the supply chain. It's absolutely vital that we pull it together, and that's really the focus of this initiative.
So zero distance, we're reducing the last mile between the producers and the consumers. We're reducing the attack surface of the containers. One of the key things that I'm really excited about zero distance is the idea that now we have a process to deliver you, Iron Bank, our partner, the containers directly. They go through your scanning process and we get a score back. And so just show of hands, has anybody gone through, any providers who have gone through the ORA or ABC process? Awesome. So if you've done that, then you'll know that you're going to see something maybe you didn't see before. And so when we got the scores, one of the unique pieces of innovation that I think is really exciting, a part of this release, and it's really in beta because it's the first time that we've done it, is we've actually created a minimal attack surface container that's based on the state profiles. And so we've gone in and our engineering team, our rocks team, as they're called, has gone in and against the ABCLRA evaluation, and we've now added additional hardening above what is a traditional Ubuntu-based container, right, just a standard container. And so by doing that, we were able to achieve significant improvements in scoring. And so we're now looking at that as a method to, we're seeing, and since we've actually had the container in the Iron Bank in the last 3 days, we've had at least 3 or 4 large commercial entities reach out to us, hey, can we use this? So we're starting to see a demand, and we're very open to feedback and what would the community like to see in those containers. And so when you're pulling these into your GitLab environment or your Jenkins or your AWS estate and pulling these containers in, you want to reduce the distance and you want to have the authentic, right? No one wants the knockoff. We want the real McCoy. We want the stamp, and we want the certification that says it's authentic. And so that's really, I think, a big part of the goal here. I think another key sort of direction that we're trying to head is to advance the state. So we're reducing container size, we're reducing attack surface, but we're also looking at all the elements of the supply chain and not just Ubuntu containers. And so I'm going to kind of let you, Mark, kind of take the innovation piece and talk to them a little bit about where we're going in the future with containers.
Thanks, Devin. As you say, we're now supplying Ubuntu-based containers to the Iron Bank, which is fantastic. We know that Ubuntu is the developer's choice. I mean, the number of people who've already come up to our booth today to say, "You're my first love." I have you at home, and it's all slightly bordering on inappropriate conversations. And then they say, "Oh, but I use X in production, or I use Y in production." So we've known for some time about containers. In fact, desktops and servers are the ones that are going to use this in development. And actually, the servers are used in production. Craig's in the front row, you've got along, yeah. Fantastic, thanks. But we needed to do something in the container front. And what we wanted to do is extend the fact that people love the Ubuntu-based container. It's a very rich ecosystem of packages that are available. You can literally do anything. And say, well, how do we ensure that then goes into the CI pipeline that Devin mentioned and actually becomes production? And we needed to rethink how we build containers. So we've done that with 2 innovations. One's called Slices, which is really just an extraction of Debian packages, how we build Ubuntu. And a tool called Chisel, which we use to compose containers in a distro-like style. When we do that, we start to produce a portfolio of images that are workload specific. And that's what this slide in the exciting colors, garish colors perhaps, shows us. Rather than just having a single base container, which is where your device is still going to live, when you reach the moment of production, you're actually going to rebase onto a different, but at the same time, exactly the same Ubuntu image, one that only has the files you need for production. I'm going to jump to the exciting end, where we talk about what most of our software is written in, C, C++, Rust, Golang, including SSL certificates. That's about 12 megabytes uncompressed in size, and only literally down to the files includes what you need. And if you don't need SSL, it's 5 megabytes, so you're talking tiny. In addition, because this was about building secure containers, about reducing the risk profile, about reducing the attack surface, we built some new paradigms into it. So there's no root user, there's no shell, there's no package manager. This is a container into which you can just layer your workloads. Other utilities that you might need, well, guess what, they're going to go on to. And I'm not going to say skip DevSecOps, but it's certainly a much lighter lift to get it into production and to maintain it across its life cycle. These are available today in a variety of guys in a variety of places. We mentioned Java and .NET because those are 2 popular runtimes, in particular with the enterprise space. But as you can see, if OpenJDK is your JDK of choice, it was 10 and 7, I think that's 17, that's 8. And we're about half the size. And when you move to .NET, we partnered with Microsoft for all of .NET, and you're again looking at about half the size. There's an interesting pull-through, which I'll finish on this container-related slide, which is we actually see less resource utilization at runtime, which is also kind of compelling. So startup times, perhaps unsurprisingly, for smaller containers, faster. Less caching, less delayed. But what we're actually seeing is less memory utilization as well. So about 20% efficiency gains in this, which is dramatic. When you look at the startup times, and that's inside clouds, right? Cloud AWS. Imagine when you move that to the cloud edge. That's massive impacts, particularly when you've got constrained resources. I mentioned constrained resources. Wouldn't it be nice if you used 20% less RAM? That is making a big difference to how people consider containers as well. So as I say, something that started, to Devin's point, with let's reduce the attack surface, became what are the paradigms we need to achieve? How do we build something that's maintainable, repeatable, and secure? And we're getting this pull-through benefit, which is actually it's better at runtime as well. Back to you, Devin.
So on that front, and maybe it might be helpful for the audience, since I only saw one hand has been through the ORA process. What's the requirement, Zach, to get into Iron Bank?
So that's a good question, Devin. So the requirements to get into the Iron Bank are, what we like to look for is that you have government demand, right? Because our program has finite resources like every other program. So what we do is we prioritize customers to onboard into the Iron Bank that have government customer bases already. Since I'm an Air Force program, I would prefer to see Air Force customers there, but we support all of the service branches. They're all very fanatical customers of ours. And so I think the word requirement there is something to focus on. I think we're trying to move away from how the government looks at requirements and look at the Iron Bank as more of a journey than it is hard and fast rules, right? We just want you to be here. So if you want to be here, we want to talk to you. And I think that's really the only requirement is that you actually want to participate.
So you've got demand in the government, you've got government stakeholders that are asking to use you, and you've got, basically an enterprise commercial product, or is it any open source can be, or do you draw a line and say, hey, you know what, this really it needs to be heavily adopted?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of open source work now. I think one of the challenges that we have is, because the Iron Bank philosophy is built here, we have some issues with working out IP protections for certain businesses, but we have solutions to that. It's just a matter of, working that out with the individual business. And, when we run into those issues, it, takes legal cycles, which takes a little bit more time, but, the Iron Bank is all about protecting things. So if we need to protect IP, we can do that too.
So that's probably a good time to actually show folks where they can get the Iron Bank documentation. If they'd like to understand the process better. I think one of the things that we always see when we're talking to customers is that customers, they're running Kubernetes, they're running containers, but there is a choice. And the choice is for them, sometimes it's between Alpine, it's between Red Hat, and it's between Ubuntu. But for us, right, as an open source provider, we want to provide and this is probably a key thing that we should mention. We want to provide the security and the security maintenance, right? As a Ubuntu and Canonical, we are a CVE enumerator. So if you find an open source finding, right, we can identify that, we can categorize that, we can report it appropriately. But with the Ubuntu Pro, we are now patching high and critical CVEs. Mark, actually, I think you know that. How long does it take us to do that?
Thanks for the lead-in. It's about 24 hours for critical CVs and normally about 2 to 3 days to patch high CVs. To give an idea of how many we see in a year, just for Ubuntu, if we get the open source apps, somewhere between 900 and 1,000 kind of fall into those categories per annum that we address. I think possibly the most frightening statistic of all, though, and it goes to the importance of this whole program, is after 5 years, so software is released 5 years later, you're still seeing in that total number of CVs, something like 33% of them are for software that was released more than 5 years ago. So it takes time to develop quality, and one of the key things that we love about what Zach is doing is he's bringing a cloud-native cadence to an audience that has struggled historically to be able to move quickly because of the very important regulatory steps that people need to go through and the quality they need to prove. We can deliver the updates, but we can't deliver them all to you with all the paperwork attached. And we can't take every single person through the process. And that's why this is such a great partnership, because effectively we can put it together to deliver to you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.